When you've already kept all the most common, popular beginner fish you can get at the pet store, you start to look for something a little more unusual. Hi, my name is Irene with girltalksfish, here with practical tips on nanofish and planted aquariums. And today I wanted to review 5 of the past oddball nano fish that I've kept in the past. Now, oddball fish refers to something a little weird looking, probably a little rare, so you're gonna have to go to a local fish store to get, might be more expensive, as well as have more complex care requirements so it can challenge you and keep you interested in the hobby. I'm gonna go backwards on my list, ending with the oddball fish I like the most. So starting at number 5 is the marbled hatchetfish. And this was the first oddball fish I ever got. It was actually in preparation for the first community tank I ever set up. I wanted to have albino corridoras on the bottom, neon tetras in the middle, and then the marbled hatchetfish up top. They're one of the smallest hatchetfish I think you can get in the hobby, getting to about maybe 2 inches. I haven't seen them that large, but they have that very distinct axe or hatchet head-like shape to them, and it has a marbled pattern, of course. If you look at them straight on, they're very, very thin, and then if you look at them from top down, they kind of look like angels with their little 2 wings hanging out at the side. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to say about them because they were also my first case of ick ever. So when I was doing my research before buying this fish, I saw that they were mostly wild caught and very prone to diseases like ick. So when I got my school of 6 home, I put them in a quarantine tub and I proactively treated them with Paragard, this kind of broad spectrum medication. Well, the first mistake I made was I didn't treat them for the full length of time that the manufacturers recommended. So that's lesson number 1 learned. I just kind of looked at them and said, hey, there's no spots on them. I think they're fine after a week. So I put them in with my main tank, and yeah, they spread ick to everyone and they did not survive. Most of them did not survive themselves. My second lesson learned is if you are pretty sure you know what disease your fish has, like ick, go with the strong medication. So this is Aquarium Solutions IckX. They are owned by Hikari now. Very, very good stuff. I would highly recommend. In terms of rating out of 5 stars, I don't unfortunately have a rating for them because I didn't keep them long enough, I feel like, to really evaluate what they were like. But from the little time I had them, they seemed really cool. They stayed in the upper third of the tank and I really liked the way they moved together. Number 4 on the list are peacock gudgeons. Now, I'm not really sure why a lot of gudgeons are considered as oddball fish, maybe just because there aren't as many of them, or they aren't as popular as bigger genres of fish like corridoras or tetras. But peacock gudgeons, they get to about 2 to 2.5 inches. They have kind of this torpedo-like shaped body that is pink with vertical red striping, some random blue spangling. I noticed the fins kind of have this yellow edge to them, and they are definitely known for that big black spot at the base of their tail. They're pretty easy to spawn from what I've heard, but the males can sometimes be a little territorial. I only kept one. Her name was Voltron, and I enjoyed having her in a community tank like this one. I kind of gave this one an average rating, around 2.5 out of 5, just because I don't think peacock gudgeons are very odd looking at all. There seemed to be nothing special about their care requirements. And then if you saw my centerpiece fish video, I also didn't rate them highly there just because even though they have so many of those rainbow colors, they don't seem to really stand out a lot. It's not very high contrast or saturated. Like I kept my peacock gudgeon with some Dalmatian balloon mollies that are just black and white splotches, and they seem to stand out a lot more than the peacock gudgeon. So just my opinion, but it's kind of an average, maybe a little boring fish. Maybe if I had more, they would be more interesting. Number 3 on the list is the pea puffer or dwarf puffer. Many of you may not know this, but I used to have a pea puffer named Jinx, and she was my little office pet. I had a small nano tank that I kept, and she was right next to me and kept me company during work. Pea puffers are one of the smallest pufferfish in the world. They are freshwater and they only get to about an inch long. So they have this kind of blimp-like body shape that is yellowish with some darker spots or splotches on it. Very cool fish. Like many pufferfish, they can kind of move around in any direction like a helicopter. They have independently moving eyes. Very, very curious. Has a lot of personality. Like, this is definitely a wet pet that you're gonna give them a name and really bond with because of their cool personality. Unfortunately, they come with a couple of cons. First being they don't play well with other fish. So this is not a community fish. They either are too small and may get eaten by a larger fish, or they kind of get territorial and they may fin nip other tank mates. So might want to go with a species only tank if it's something you're considering. Also, they are picky eaters. They really, really like live foods like snails or frozen bloodworms. Although I have heard some people having success with a prepared food like Hikari Viper Bites, mainly because it looks just like a bloodworm. So they're these skinny little, I don't know, red like sticks that are kind of curly, and so when you drop in the water, they slowly sink and they move around like a falling worm, which kind of activates the pea puffer's hunting instincts. I gave them a rating of 3, maybe 3.5 out of 5 stars because of those cons. You know, a pea puffer is not something you can just throw into a community tank like this and expect that everything will be hunky-dory. It might, but you probably should keep a really close eye on it just in case it turns into a bloodbath. And then feeding-wise, you know, if you need to get a pet sitter, it's not going to be as simple as just telling them to feed some flakes or pellets to them. So, but if you're willing to put in the effort, very cool pet. I definitely want to keep them again someday. Coming in hot at number 2 is the Kuhli loach. I know some people don't like them because they kind of look like a wiggly mass of snakes, but I think that's awesome. So they get to about 3 to 4 inches. They look like a tiny little eel. The classic Kuhli loach look is kind of vertical bands alternating in light tan yellow to like a dark brown black. But there are other varieties like the silver and black Kuhli loach that you can look for. I personally like the original coloration. They have kind of these black little beady eyes and little whiskers or barbels like a corridors, and can be mostly found scavenging along the bottom, so bottom dweller. The pros are very, very peaceful fish. They're not picky eaters. Like I said, they're eating scraps off the bottom, and they are super hardy. So if you've heard me tell stories in the past of Master Breeder Dean, he basically mostly emptied out a fish tank and then ended up finding out months later that there was one little Kuhli loach still alive in there. So super duper awesome. The cons are they are a nocturnal fish, so they mostly are active at night. And then plus they can be a little shy and hide, especially if you have more boisterous fish in the tank or kind of a tank boss that really rules the aquarium. You might not see them a lot. Because of the hiding behavior, I do give them 4 stars out of 5, but I feel like it can be mitigated if you have lots of cover, whether it's aquarium decorations or a heavily planted tank, and if you provide them lots of buddies. They definitely want to be in a school where more is better, and then just pick more peaceful tank mates, and then you'll definitely see them come out more. And my number 1 winner of best oddball nano fish that I absolutely adore is the hillstream loach. By this point you probably knew because I've made several videos about them on my channel, but this is a 2.5 inch long miniature stingray with a very flat underside and kind of a streamlined body. Has a very high contrast coloration of spots and patterned stripes, really cool looking. I love how they're not picky eaters and they are excellent algae eaters. They don't just eat on flat surfaces like glass, but also on textured rocks, driftwood, as well as plants with even lacy, delicate leaves. They'll try to balance themselves on there and get all those bits of algae. I think the reason why more people don't keep this awesome fish is because they are more on the expensive side, and they originally come from cooler waters with very fast moving current, and I think that intimidates a lot of people. But by this point, we've seen many fish keepers have successfully kept and bred them in aquariums with waters up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, as well as gentle sponge filters for flow. I personally love the way they kind of shuffle from side to side when they're climbing the aquarium walls. Kind of reminds me of a gecko, as well as when they're on the substrate, the gravel, looking for food. They flutter their fins really fast, like a bird. And then occasionally you will see the males kind of wrestle each other. It looks like they're circling each other non-stop, where one of them, the males are basically trying to literally get the upper hand and climb on top of the other male to intimidate them. But nowadays, since I have a very heavily planted aquarium, I don't get to see that a lot because it's a lot of cover for them to establish their territories. I am going to give them the coveted rating of 5 out of 5 because I cannot think of any major downsides to this fish. It's honestly one of my most favorite species I've ever kept in an aquarium, and I think it would be really fun to kind of set up a separate breeding tank for them and grow out little hillstream loach babies one day. If you want to see more in-depth care guides for my top 2 favorite oddball fish, I've got them posted over here. Otherwise, take time to enjoy your aquariums, and I'll see you in the next video.